Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking about the top 20 college football teams, and I'm looking at we're on number 10. I have picked Texas. They're probably in the three teams I'm picking in the Big 12 this year. Oklahoma, Texas, and Iowa State. Coming off a great year, definitely improved from the season before. Coach has everyone dialed in to his playing skills and what he wants from the team. Jim, what do you think?
I've got Florida at number 10. 10-3 team. Dan Mullen, second year. Experienced quarterback for Felipe Franks. 5 offensive starters, 8 defensive starters. They've only got one really tough road game, and that's at LSU. So, everything is kind of stacked up to look pretty good for them boys, if you ask me. That's schedule seems favorable as far as not having to go on the road. Some of their big games they're playing at neutral sites, but the only place where they're going to somebody else's house is the LSU game. So a lot of starters. That defense should be solid, and the way Dan Mullen's offenses are, they're going to put up points. So I've got them boys at 10.
Well, number 9 for me, I got Notre Dame. Coming back a good year. Hopefully they can repeat it. Typical Notre Dame, they've had one good year, one bad year. So see how they pull it off. This year they have a pretty light schedule. I think they're predicted to win in their division. Granted, they're independents. They can play wherever they want. What do you think? Who do you have for number 9?
Notre Dame. Brian Kelly, back 12-1 season, 7 offensive, 6 defensive starters. They got to go to Georgia, Louisville, and at Michigan, and Stanford. But home games against New Mexico, Virginia, Bowling Green. They got USC coming there, Virginia Tech and Navy. It's few trips, to some tough teams, but overall, man, with that much experience, solid coach staff and recruiting classes they've been bringing in. So, yeah, I've got them entrenched as my number 9 team.
Well, number 8 for me, I got Florida, a little bit higher than you do.
Yeah.
They have a pretty decent schedule. I'm back for what you're saying about them. It'd be a very dominant, for them to do this year. Who do you have?
Well, number 8, I've got the Utah Utes coming off a 9-5 season, bringing back 7 offensive starters, 7 defense. This is Kyle Whittingham's 15 years there. Got a early road game at BYU. They got to go to SC and at Washington. Pretty much everybody they're playing tough is at home, so I really like. I think the schedule sets up favorable for those boys. They're gonna be the surprise team out of the Pac-10, in my opinion.
Well, number 7 for me, I picked Auburn because I feel that's where they kind of deserve to be this year, because there's so much competition going on in this year. I think this is the most athletic college football season we're going to see, and not in just scoring, but in talent, player talent. So I have them at number 7. What's your 7?
Number 7 for me, we got Ohio State coming off their 13-1 record last year. Reason I have them this low, Ryan Day, first year coach there, got to rebuild that offense. He lost his running backs, has lost his quarterback, 4 offensive starters, but the defense, man, looks loaded. And they've got 9 defensive starters back. Their schedule just sets up so favorable. They get Florida, Atlanta, Atlantic, Cincinnati at home. Then they go to Indiana. Then Miami of Ohio comes out. So their first real test, they have to travel to Nebraska. Then they got Michigan State at home. Then they go play Northwestern. They get Wisconsin at home. They get Maryland at home. They get Penn State at home. And they don't have another tough game until Michigan, So I have them boys sitting entrenched at number 7.
For number 6, I have Michigan, and this I think is going to be a do or die for Jim Harbaugh because it just he's kind of back against the wall on that team. You know, he can only do so much, and everyone. The things that he has a good. He's very interesting coach. I'll say it that way.
He has promised a bunch, hasn't he?
Yes.
He's over promised and under delivered, right?
Mm-hmm. And what do you have for number 6?
Number 6, going to the SEC, got LSU Tigers coming off a 10-3 record last year, 4th year for Coach Ed Orgeron. 8 offensive starters back and 8 defensive starters. I mean, that is a loaded team, man. I mean, they got a patsy at first with Georgia Southern, but then they go to Texas, and then they don't have really anything until they play Florida, and then the only other road games that really look that tough is, they go to Alabama on November the 9th, but, pretty much everything else is a home game. I mean, that you have that kind of talent, lots of NFL-type players on their defense, and that schedule's pretty easy to handle, that schedule, I think. And I just think them boys are set up to have a big year. So I got them sitting at number 6.
I actually have them a little bit higher. I have them 5th.
So you're going with your...
That's my 5th pick is LSU. I stand behind, what you said. I just feel that SEC is still a dominant force in the division, and I think LSU is back in the game of competing with the Alabama, with the Florida, with the A&M, even with Tennessee. I know we haven't mentioned Tennessee anywhere on my board. I don't know about your board, but I just feel LSU is coming back, and they're be reckoned with this year.
So number 5, I've got Michigan Wolverines. I got them ahead of Ohio State just because of the schedule. Michigan's coming off a 10-3 season here. Harbaugh's 5th year. He's 0-4 against Ohio State. That's the game. That's what he's measured on. But he's got 8 offensive starters back. He's got 5 defensive starters. Lost a lot of defensive players to the NFL. But, man, when you look at this schedule, I mean, just Middle Tennessee, Army, both at home. Then they finally go play at Wisconsin. Then they get Rutgers and Iowa at home. Then they have Illinois on the road. Then Penn State, that's going to be kind of the second big game on the road. But then they got Notre Dame at home, Michigan State at home, and then they got Ohio State at home. And that's why I put them ahead. I just think their schedule is just a little bit more favorable than Ohio State's.
We asked a Michigan fan, and their idea is a winning season is if you beat Ohio State. They don't care anything. They just want to beat Ohio State. They don't care if you lose all but win one. That's all they care about.
That's the only one they care about winning there.
Number 4, I got Ohio State.
Okay.
I think, granted that you have new coach coming in, new way of development. I mean, they did get hit really hard in the NFL draft, but I believe that they can bounce back, buy in, get a good quarterback in there. And I think the Big Ten is very, like I said, very competitive, very something to watch this year. Who do you have?
At number 4?
Yes.
Well, I got the team near and dear to my heart at number 4. I've got the Oklahoma Sooners coming off a 12-2 season, and a trip to the Final Four. Lincoln Riley's 3rd year. He's coming off replacing back-to-back Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. They got to totally rebuild their offense. They only have 4 offensive starters coming back, 8 defensive starters. But, they got Jalen Hurts coming over from Alabama. Not as far along as the other 2 transfer quarterbacks because they, spent a year in the system. He's coming in. He only got there, for one semester. But their schedule, they start off playing Houston on Sunday night. Then they got South Dakota. Then they got a trip to UCLA. Should be manageable. Texas Tech, they got that one. Then at Kansas, and then the big one, Texas, second October the 5th. That'll be a tough one. Then West Virginia, Kansas State. They got Iowa State at home. Then they got Baylor, who's a surprise team. Got TCU at home. They do have to go to Oklahoma State. They got to go to Stillwater to play, but I just think with Grinch coming in as their new defensive coordinator, they've recruited enough athletes. I just think they had them in the wrong scheme. So I'm thinking that Oklahoma might be right back in the Final Four again. So I'm going with them at 4.
Number 3, I got Alabama.
Okay, that's a little different than everybody else has been picking.
They got 3 hard games. Then 8 against Mississippi, because they always have a problem with Ole Miss every year. Number 2, Texas A&M. They have to go there, and then then you got LSU.
They got LSU at home.
Yes. So those are 3 big games that I can see as competing with Alabama. So that is my 3rd. What is yours?
Well, my 3rd, I'm going with Georgia Bulldogs. They're coming off an 11-3 season last year. They're Kirby Smart's 4th year. They've got 6 starters back on offense, 6 on defense. The first tough game they got, they've got Notre Dame at home. They've got Florida at Jacksonville, basically a neutral site. They go to Auburn. They got Texas A&M at home. And then they they go to Georgia Tech. So I just look at that schedule and I'm like, man, that is pretty favorable right there. I mean, first game against Vanderbilt, then Murray State, Arkansas State before they play Notre Dame. And, I think the quarterback, Jake Fromm, if things fall right, this kid could be a first-round draft pick if he chooses to come out this year. So, yep, I like Georgia at number 3.
Number 2 is I have Clemson. Coming off their dominant year they had, but I just don't think they can repeat. I mean, they're still in the top 4 to make the playoff system, but I just have them as number 2.
Yeah, yep. As luck would have it, I've got Clemson at number 2 myself. Coming off the national championship, 15-0. Dabo Swinney's 12th year, 8 starters back on offense. Then they lost 7 starters on defense, so they got four back. But man, they don't rebuild, they reload. And and I'm sitting here looking at their schedule. It's like, man, they don't have to go play anybody tough on the road at all. I mean, their road games are at Syracuse, at North Carolina, at Louisville, at NC State. I mean, man, I may want to redo this and put them at number 1, but good gosh, this schedule is just so. Texas A&M, at home the second week, that might be, that might be a little troublesome for them. But when I just look at that schedule, I mean, it just all sets up for them, for me, to be right back in the Final Four again. I mean, we may be looking at a rematch.
Yep.
Them in Alabama for the championship.
Number 1, I have Oklahoma, your favorite, to win it all.
I would like to hear your reasons for that.
I think it's their time. They've been to the playoffs twice, and it's time for them to win the national title. How about you?
I would love to go with you on that one, but man, I got Alabama number 1. They're coming off 14-1 national championship runner-up. Nick Saban's 13th year. They got replacing 6 offensive starters, 6 defense. But there again, when I go down this list, and look at this schedule, I mean, they're playing Duke in Atlanta. Then they got New Mexico State. Then they go to South Carolina. They got Southern Miss and Mississippi at home. Now, the Texas A&M game, that could be a little troublesome. That, it's a large crowd there. But then Tennessee at home, Arkansas at home. And then the LSU game. And that right there is just, they've only given up, 9 points during the last 8 games win streak against these boys. So